There's usually that rumor or a myth that you need to eat 40 minutes before your workout or after, and if you don't do that, you're going to lack. There's a window of protein synthesis that you're going to miss out on. That is not true. That is not true. That is not true. Welcome to Just Biz. I'm your trainer Jasper Bravo. Today, I'm taking you through a video on one of the most important things, if not the most important thing, in muscle growth and body recomposition. That is losing of fats and building of muscles, and that is proteins. And we are starting right now. So number one, I'm just going to start by letting you know how much proteins you need, because right now it's if you don't know this, maybe you're the only visitor in Jerusalem. But this is something that is now known. It's no longer a myth. It's no longer an issue. It's no longer a doubt that proteins are the building blocks for muscles, right? And that proteins help in also losing fat, right? I think that one we're cleared. So if that's what's up, then we need to talk about some myths and misconceptions and the things you just need to fix for you to get. Because I know if you're watching this video, chances are you've missed at least one of these. And number one, let's start with the myths about proteins. The first myth is, let me put this across as in question form. Is it true that protein is protein? Like protein, if you have 10 grams of proteins of animal protein and 10 grams of plant protein, like they're the same. Is it true or is it false? And the myth is that proteins are the same, right? That if you have protein powder and if somebody else has steak and somebody else has beans, all these two people have had the same amount and they have the same amount of grams of protein in all these guys are going to get the same amount of gain from the muscles. I mean from the proteins. And the answer is no, it's not true. The proteins are not the same. There's some proteins which are better than others. And in what way? In this way. Number one, some proteins are more bioavailable than others. Okay, bioavailability of a protein or of any food is just how much the percentage and the efficiency of your body, what percentage of it is utilized by your body, that is synthesized for it to be used by your body. Then number two, at what is, because there's some which are just not easy for your body to synthesize, synthesize and absorb and use in your system. So we just need to know that there's some which are better and some are not. For instance, animal proteins just tend to be more bioavailable than plant proteins. Just put that across, okay? And then plant proteins are also better. They are more bioavailable than I know some of you are going to shoot me for saying this, than the protein powders. So many of you spend so much money on the protein powders, but the problem with that protein powder is that it's about 13% bioavailable, which means just 13% of it is going to be used. Amino acids in it are going to be used to build and help your body recover, all that shit. You can be having it so frequently. You can be having, like, let's say you had 20 grams of protein powder. Then somebody else somewhere had just had 10 grams or 20 grams of beef. The person who had 20 grams of beef is in a better place than you. Okay? And when I say grams, I mean grams of proteins, not the quantity of the substance we're talking about. So I think that's out of the way. So when you're going for proteins, you need to look at the bioavailability of those proteins, and you should just know that some are greater than others. Like for instance, the overprocessed proteins are just not as good because some of them are just not going to be utilized by your body so well. And the ones which are closer to nature than like the plant proteins are also better than those ones which are highly processed. But now if you compare the plant proteins and the animal proteins, the plant proteins tend to be more bioavailable. And talking about also bioavailability, I just want you also to know that this is just a tip. I want you to know that the most bioavailable protein is human milk, the breast milk. So since that's not something we can have, so if we had a chance, that's what we could have, we could gain so much. But since that's not what you can get, there's number two is something that will interest you guys so much. Number two, most available protein. I know some of you are going to say beef, but that's not true. The second most bioavailable protein after our mama's breast milk just happens to be eggs, you see. So that's why the biggest secret, if you want to be a great bodybuilder, you want to build a good body, a lean, or if you're a lady, you want to have those beautiful curves, just eat a lot of eggs, because most of it are going to turn into those ass that you're looking for. So because it is a big percent of it is used. So since you can't get your mama's milk, just go for the eggs. But also after that, also in that order you'll have the beef. Then after beef there's fish. Then after fish there's chicken. After chicken there's fish. In that order, you get. But generally, just know that the most bioavailable protein is eggs. So if you were to choose between protein powder and eggs, enjoy your eggs, bro. Then the second myth is that, and I'm going to put this also in question form, is it true that it's important the time you need to take your proteins after or before your workout? Because there's always this thing, whether it's a myth, you're just about to find out. So is it a myth that there's a window that you need to take your proteins for you to get the maximum gains from it? That is from the time you started working out or the time you are heading to workout. And now this one is now a sticky state we are finding ourselves in, but because there's a big yes and there's a big no in this case. And allow me to explain before you kill me. Okay, number one, it's true that there's a time you need to eat before or after your workout. But it's not that strict, because people shall think that you need to eat maybe 30 minutes before your workout, and after your workout you should not stay for more than 1 hour before having some proteins. And that is not true. The truth is you should have your proteins within 5 hours before or after you are eating. That is after workout. That is, your workout should be sandwiched at least between 2 meals which have a gap of 5 hours. Which means if your first meal was at 1 a.m., assuming you work out at night, then the next meal could be, then you work out at, the next meal is at 6 a.m. So that is like 5 hours in between, right? So you should have your workout in between these 2 meals. But if the first thing you do is when you wake up, you eat, you work out. After you working out, you should not go for more than 5 hours without you having something. It's a long time, and that's why it's not something you really need to worry about so much. But there's usually that rumor or a myth that you need to eat 40 minutes before your workout or after, and if you don't do that, you're going to lack. There's a window of protein synthesis that you're going to miss out on. That is not true. That is not true. That is not true. The truth is, you just need to eat some proteins within a range of how long? 5 hours. 5 hours intervals. Another thing that usually is an issue is, I think, is it a myth or true, is that your body can only take 20 grams of proteins at a go, right? That if you eat extra proteins, it's going to go to waste. Is that false? Is it false? Is it true? Is it a myth or is it a fact? The answer is that is a big myth. It's not a big myth, but it's a myth, and maybe a small myth. But let me just say it's a myth. And why am I saying that is because, number one, it's true that there's no limit to amount of proteins that your body can absorb at a time. All this is dependent on, have you been fasting? Because, for instance, if you've fasted, let's say your breakfast in the morning, you can even eat as many as 50 grams of proteins and your body will still absorb it. Understand? Number two, the issue is your body usually doesn't have the maximum amount of proteins it can synthesize. What really happens is there's a maximum amount of protein synthesis that takes place. Muscle synthesis that takes place, which means ability for your body to build muscles just uses about 20 grams. But doesn't mean that the rest of the proteins that you consume at that time is going to go to waste, because the other functions of proteins in your body, including recovery, including from injury, that is, let's say it's healing of wounds and all that. So generally, it's not a fact, because if you've been fasting for so long, then you eat proteins, your body is able to absorb so much and synthesize so much. But if you've been eating, if you just ate proteins a few hours ago, your body will be limited to amount of proteins that you can have. But the issue is, what you really need to worry about really is not amount of proteins that you need to take as a go, but what you really need to be worried about is if you're really achieving the amount of proteins you need for you to function optimally in a day. And that now takes us to the third myth, the fourth myth, which is it true that the bigger you are, the more amount of proteins you need to take? And the answer is yes. That is not a myth, it's a fact that in a day, there's amount of proteins you need to take. And it's about Now the myth comes in that the people usually say that it's about 1 gram of protein per pound of body mass, and that is too much. According to the latest science research, it's been found out that just about 1 kg to 1.6 grams per kg, which means if you weigh 60 kilograms, it means you need to just take about 60 grams or 65 or to 70 grams of proteins. But now the one that people say that you need double, like if you're 60 kg, if you weigh 60 kg, you need to take 120 grams. That's just too much. That is just not achievable. That just doesn't make sense. So that's the amount you need. But again, I just need you also not to worry about if you're having too much proteins, because it's not possible to have too much proteins accidentally unless you went for a party or something. But generally, we just tend to not achieve the amount of proteins we can have in a day. So if you're worried so much about, am I having too much proteins, I just need you to start being very keen and try to record the amount of proteins you're having in a day, and you'll find that chances are you're not getting that 1 gram to 1.6 grams per kg of body mass in a day. And on top of that, I just need you also to understand this, that you don't need to worry also so much about the amount of proteins you're having in a day. Rather, I need you to worry so much about the amount of proteins you're having in a week, because our bodies just tend to work more in a longer term. Because if you achieve the amount of proteins for today, and then tomorrow you miss, and tomorrow but one you miss, then the other day you overachieve, there's no way like the ones you had for the other day is going to compensate for this day. So I just need you to think about how much you can spread, and make sure that throughout the day, throughout the week, you have as many days as possible that you are achieving the amount of proteins that you need for you to synthesize and to grow as much as you need. And apart from that, there's also a myth that goes around that says that if you have so much proteins, you're going to be fat, and that is further from the truth. In fact, when you have so much proteins, chances of you losing weight is very high, because number one, proteins are digested so slowly, so you'll feel fuller for longer. And one of the things that make us really gain so much weight is not the fact that you eat too much, but it's because you eat too frequently, because of continuous feeling of hunger. But when you eat so much proteins, chances are you're going to feel hungry less frequently, and that's why it's okay to worry about if you are really achieving the amount of proteins you need in a day. So if you like this video, I would like you to share and with somebody that you think it can help. And if you want us to talk about carbohydrates, I think you can tell me out in the comments below, right? And I love you guys, and see ya.